so many new pieces to this IU football team.
To me, that's going to set the tone on how you get ready for games on Saturday in the fall.
I would put that Indiana room up against anybody else in the conference, and that's something that we typically don't even come close to saying.
If you want to get total sickos committee about it, there's a position battle at long snapper too.
This is the Hoosier Huddle Podcast, part of the College Huddle Podcast Network.
Good morning, evening, afternoon, whenever you're listening to this. It's an exciting time. We have 30 days until Indiana football starts the 2025 regular season. We're recording this a little bit before 30 days, but felt like 30 days until we play deserves 30 storylines to run through. So, Nate, first of all, how are you? Second of all, are you ready to kind of talk about a real smorgasbord of topics tonight?
Oh yeah, I'm doing great. I was getting excited, kind of going through and brainstorming all these storylines. Some of them kind of random, some of them truly have been thinking about, for the last 100 days or so, and excited to talk Indiana football. I mean, we're within a month. I think football in general. I think we get the Hall of Fame game this week, so it feels like it's coming. I saw the Colts put on pads this week. It just feels like things are starting to happen football wise, and that's so exciting.
Yeah, it's about that time. I walked outside a couple days ago in the morning, and it was the first time it smelled like football, where the air kind of starts to just get a little crisp, a little fall, a little football. So that felt good. Nate, before we get into it, we do have a quick little promo from our friends at Heartwork Brewing. Heartwork Brewing in Bloomington, made by Hoosiers for Hoosiers, a place we like to go, a place we like to frequent. Our plan is to try to get out there during the season and do a couple live shows as well. But really excited to have our friends from Heartwork Brewing with us for this season.
Heartwork Brewing, we are fiercely independent. From our variety of craft beers to our artisan Neapolitan-style pizzas, we put our heart into our work. We offer a full menu of draft beers, from our award-winning lagers to IPAs, sours, even our house-made seltzer. Our Northside Taproom has a variety of events and spaces for groups of all sizes. Heartwork is proud to be a locally and veteran-owned business here in Bloomington, just a stone's throw from Memorial Stadium and Assembly Hall at 1703 North College Avenue. Visit heartworkbrewing.com for hours and event info. At Heartwork Brewing, we are...
So thanks to Heartwork Brewing. Like the ad said, they're heartworkbrewing.com. Hours, events, cool space, cool place, cool people. So I would encourage folks before games. It is really close to the venues as well. So before games, would encourage folks to check it out. All right, Nate, let's get into it. 30 days until kickoff, 30 topics. These are kind of all over the place. So some people, I think, will enjoy the kind of hectic bouncing off the wall nature of these topics. Some people may want it to be a little more focused, I would say. But either way, we'll start with number one. Sammy and I had kind of talked about it a little bit ago. IU checks in at number 6 in the Cleveland.com Big Ten preseason poll. The Big Ten itself actually does not do polls anymore. So this Cleveland.com one has kind of become the official Big Ten preseason poll for a while now. So IU checks in at 6. Penn State was at the top, barely edging out Ohio State. And then Oregon, Illinois, Michigan at 5, and Indiana at 6. So IU obviously plays on the road against 2 of those teams, and then they host Illinois. So for the folks that said last season's schedule wasn't tough enough, I think definitely in conference play, this schedule ramps up a little bit for Indiana.
Yeah, I mean, last year we were picked, 17th in this poll. Always comes out the Monday right before the Big Ten Media Days, so it's always a hot topic then. And I know last year Sig had said, he's not used to finishing anywhere near the bottom of the polls and those kind of preseason polls, and clearly proved people wrong last year. And I think it's an interesting spot to eventually wind up this year. I truly do feel like, just on paper, I think potentially this roster is more talented. I think it has the potential to really shine. A lot of the areas that I felt like potentially we were weak last year, I think we've improved in going into this season. So I think it's a good spot. It's more respect for sure. But I think it really will have the opportunity, like you mentioned, to peg off a lot of those teams that are right above and kind of prove that last year was no fluke and get things off to a good foot. Yeah,
definitely interesting. I think it's about where I would have put us 2 years ago, watching us blow another game against Purdue. If you told me 2 years later we would be upset that we were ranked 6th in the preseason poll for the Big Ten, I would have said, what are you talking about? What, for baseball? Or
yeah.
But no, so I think impressive, obviously 1 year turnaround. Signetti's kind of common theme at media days was, we're not trying to sustain the success from last year, we're trying to improve, which I thought was pretty good. And he said, all those pictures of College Game Day and Big Noon Kickoff and all that stuff that they have around the facility, that's all gone. So I'm sure they'll have some college football playoff stuff. Hopefully they'll have some of that stuff up in Memorial Stadium. It'd be crazy if they don't, but we've seen that happen before. But it's kind of a flush it month here to get ready for Old Dominion. So we'll be really interested to see how it shakes out, of course. But IU checks in at number 6. All right. Number 2, kind of a bummer. Still no sellouts. We saw tickets sales really ramp up in conference play last year after IU really got through that Maryland game, where a lot of people were like, are you for real? Can you really do it? Is this really a good team? I've seen this before, blah, 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 blah. IU beats Maryland in kind of a rain-soaked game. And then ticket sales really took off from there. They ended the season, with four straight sellouts, which really hasn't happened ever for IU. So that was awesome to see. I am kind of bummed personally that you haven't seen interest in at least buying single game tickets. Season ticket sales, from what it sounds like, are way up, which is great. But it's kind of a bummer you haven't seen any traction yet in these early non-conference games, which are priced really affordably. A lot of guys should play. Hopefully you get 3 wins, but definitely a bummer that you haven't come out of the gate even selling out like that Illinois game, for example.
Yeah, I just saw this morning. It was I'll give some credit here. Trevor Birch, so at TV7B, tweeted earlier today all the remaining tickets. So looks like Old Dominion almost 10,000, Kennesaw almost 12,000, Indiana State. That's a Friday game, so I kind of expected that one to be a little bit of a struggle. But again, that's over 11,000. We're down to about 1,000 in Illinois, 7,000 Michigan State, over 7,000 UCLA, and almost 10,000 Wisconsin. I mean, it's just kind of insane. I would have expected probably a little bit more hype, especially after last year. And I mean, we have had our gripes in the past with the game day experience, but I could not stop finding myself in Memorial Stadium last year and just absolutely loving. And I mean, of course, the result on the field plays a part in that, but it legitimately was enjoyable to go to those games. They have changed the game day experience. It's awesome seeing that place sold out. It's kind of disappointing. And we saw recently the Sig had tweeted, going back to the very beginning, I guess, of last year, where he's kind of just urging the fans to get back into the stadium. He did that again this past week. We're saying, hey, we need to show up. Hey, we need to be loud. Like, just kind of going back to the basics. And I wish we weren't back at the basics, but it's kind of the state of where we are right now. So if you haven't bought those tickets, definitely start doing that. Go support this team. I think it's a really fun home slate. We got some, what you would think would be easy wins at the beginning, get some confidence, see some of the new guys, learn some of these new names. And like you mentioned, seeing eventually at those end of the games, some of those backup guys, and seeing kind of what the future could look like with the new recruiting classes that are coming in. And then you've got some very exciting games, kicking it off with that very first Big Ten one at home in Illinois. And that's, I mean, we'll later talk about games that we're most excited for. I think that's got to be one of the most exciting games of the season right there.
Yeah, definitely. That should be a really good one. I know a lot of my Illinois friends here, obviously being a Chicago guy, are excited for that one too. So that'll be a really kind of fascinating game. Yeah, so I would say just anyone watching doesn't have tickets to one of those early games. I personally like the Friday night games. Like, I get some people are really into high school football. Unless you have a kid playing on the team, I don't really get it. Obviously, I don't have a kid on the high school football team, but I don't know. Friday night game is cool too because it's not going to be super hot. Probably the cheapest ticket of the season. I don't know. So I think a good mix of Saturdays, the Friday, and then obviously Illinois to start the season. So you got to buy the tickets. We can't act like we're a program that's going to make the college football playoff every season if your coach has to beg you to buy tickets to the home opener.
Yeah.
Just
I mean, a big thing he wants to do is expand the stadium, and we don't want it to be even more empty than it is already lining up to be. So yeah, for sure.
All right. Number 3, Holden Stays. So we told you this was going to go all over the place. So hopefully you'll enjoy it. Holden Stays, tight end transfer from Tennessee. IU obviously loses Zach Horton. He's with the Lions right now for training camp. So hopefully he sticks on the practice squad and maybe, cracks the rotation at some point. He was a big part of the offense. He did a lot on special teams. He was a really good blocker, always in the right spot, not overly explosive, not overly athletic, but just a really solid glue guy that I think will really kind of be missed, especially early in the season. He knew the system. He understands the standard. So yeah, I think that will be kind of a bigger loss than we may realize. Hopefully not. Holden Stays comes in. He, I think, is kind of one of the only guys that has broken Signetti's production over potential mold. I think you look at Holden Stays and you see a guy oozing with talent, has the frame, has the skill set. The last 2 seasons, he has 15 catches each of the last 2 seasons. So obviously you're looking for more production than that for a guy, especially with it'll segue into the next topic. I think the slot or throwing balls over the middle is kind of going to be an interesting area to watch early in the season. Obviously a tight end that can stretch the field like Stays can would alleviate some of that, but Nate, I think he'll be counted on more than people might think.
Yeah, he's very interesting because, like you said, he is totally not the mold of the production over potential. He's truly the guy that you show up to the practice field or you show up on game day and you see him in warmups and you're like, oh, I mean, I bet that guy is just insanely good at football. And then you kind of see, I mean, he was decent at Notre Dame before he went to Tennessee. Again, kind of just decent at Tennessee. Not necessarily the potential or the production that you would actually expect from the frame, from the recruiting rankings, all that kind of thing. But is a guy that on paper you just think should pop. The question is Holden Stays ready for the spotlight? I think the answer is we really just don't know. But I think it could be so pivotal in the season. Because, Horton really was. He was a security blanket when we needed him. He could block. He was not one that needed the spotlight. But if he needed to be thrust into it, he was ready. He had the first touchdown of the year last year. He had a very big touchdown at the very end of the game and at Northwestern that kind of put the game at rest. So it's a bigger hole, I think, than we realize we're filling, because I think Horton just kind of, despite being very good, he was never in that spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if Holden Stays has to be in it, but he has to be ready when he is in it.
Yep. So yeah, I think he's kind of a fascinating one for me. I think that could be a huge win, a huge boom, or it could be kind of a bust for IU. They also brought in Riley Nowakowski from Wisconsin. I think he'll play kind of more of a blocking role, more of a special teams role. I think he'll play kind of the Horton role when he wasn't catching passes, and you hope Stays is a guy that can stretch the field a little bit. Hopefully that combo works to maybe give you a little bit more production than Horton had. But I think if you get what you got from Horton last year out of Stays, I think you would take that.
Yeah.
So
Nowakowski just seems like a guy that almost is like a bonus offensive lineman at times. So
yeah, crack some
he's
skulls in the run
yeah.
game. Yeah, which
Yep.
I like. Hopefully he wears like the big neck roll.
Yeah,
And
just go
like,
full Wisconsin.
the bar right through the front of the face mask, like that kind of thing. Yeah, I think that's kind of what we need. We need a little more grit. So that could be good. So, all right, 3 down, 27 to go. Number 4, who's in the slot? So Stays, I think, could catch some balls over the middle. I think the plan was to have Tyler Morris fill kind of that Miles Cross, Keyshawn Williams role that you saw last year as the Donovan McCulley for Tyler Morris trade. He comes in for Michigan, tears his ACL in spring ball. He's out for the season. Enter Jonathan Brady from Cal, who was teammates with Mendoza. Played some slot at Cal, played a lot of slot in New Mexico State, so he's an option. LeBron Bond, true freshman's an option there. It's going to be interesting. I think they'll flex guys around. I think Omar Cooper will play more inside a little bit.
Yeah, you could see Mekhi Jackson there as well.
Yeah,
There's
that's
another St. Francis PA guy that played with Surratt back in the day, then went to App State, played very well there. He's transferred over, so could be another one that could fill into that spot. Yeah, you mentioned LeBron Bond. That's one that obviously, like on tape in high school, you think like, gosh, nobody can catch this kid. Is that true going into the college game? And
right.
he is just a little bit on the smaller side too, just because he's young. So can he? You throw him in the middle of a Big Ten defense. Can he withstand those hits across an entire season? You have that question. It is. I think there's a lot of things in this Indiana offense that I'm very excited for and feel very confident in. And that is definitely a big question mark. We've kind of talked about him the last two of, is tight end a big enough position in this Shanahan offense that like we need someone to truly be able to do everything? And is Horton's role like going to be able to be replaced? And then are we going to have that slot guy? And we've just had the Keyshawn Williams or whatever last year, Miles Price filling in. Like it just, it's definitely a spot that is a question mark.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a mix of guys. They're going to rotate guys. I think they've proven that at least through last season. So I think a lot of guys will have the opportunity to play. That's why I'm so interested in those non-conference games to start the season.
Yeah, it's a big bonus of having those first 3 games. Of hopefully we can start to see like who truly can do it in a game atmosphere and who kind of stands out. And we know every single rep is going to be important to Sig, and he will be watching until that final buzzer. So
yeah,
it'll be a pivotal first 3 weeks.
Yeah, Miles Kendrick, another guy too. He might be one of the fastest players on the team, another true freshman. So that'll be really interesting to see. Switching sides of the ball, obviously D'Angelo Pons is back. Try 5, get 6. Checking in on all the preseason All-American lists, all Big Ten, all that good stuff. He had an outstanding season as a true sophomore last year, coming in from James Madison, obviously, and immediately getting thrust into the starting boundary corner 1 role. Had an awesome season, obviously, in pass coverage, was really solid in the run game as well. For a guy that's definitely smaller in stature, I think he proved he's not afraid to play up by the line and really throw his head in there, which is great. So I think this year, now that you have 13 games of tape on Pons, who had an interception in the playoff game, 2 against Washington, had just an outstanding season, held Jeremiah Smith to his worst game of the year last year. I think the guy opposite of Pons is going to be pretty busy this season. So Cignetti basically in Las Vegas said if the season started today, it would be Jamari Sharp. You brought in Rylan Gandy from Pitt, who was all ACC. Amarian Knighton from NIU, who had an interception against Notre Dame, comes in. He could, I think, play safety a little bit if you wanted him to as well. And then you have some freshmen that they like and some redshirt freshmen they like. So it's a deep room at corner, but beyond Pons, it's kind of up for grabs. So 1, who's your guy? 2, are they ready?
Yeah, you just don't necessarily have that kind of standout guy. It always felt like, well, we had Jameer Johnson last year, and he was definitely a solid number 2 right behind Pons. I also felt confident with him out there, could make tackles in open space, all that kind of things. And yeah, it feels like now we've replaced him in the aggregate, I guess, if we're going Moneyball, with about 4 other guys. but they all kind of have their different strengths, different weaknesses. And obviously you can't have every single one of them on the field for the perfect scenario every single time. So it's an interesting one of, we have the experience with Jamari Sharp, and then we've got those guys that are transferring in that we don't know as well. Do they transfer over to the Big Ten? Do they fit in the system better? There's a lot of question marks there. I think the nicest thing has just got to be, we know that we have Pons on one side, and hopefully with a little more experience in other parts of the defense as well, maybe you can kind of hide that other corner spot. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't know. If I had to put my money on it, I would say it would be Gandy. I think is more of a boundary corner. I think Sharp is more physical and more athletic. So I think they'll mix and match, which, wouldn't be the worst thing. IU kind of rode their guys on defense a little bit, especially in the secondary. It was kind of, they were out there until they weren't, where they rotated a lot more on the D line and a linebacker a little bit. So that's an interesting one for sure. Sticking with the defense, just mentioned him, but Aiden Fisher, everything. Sinetti called him the leader of the team, hands down. And he said everyone in the locker room would say that. Had an outstanding season last year, went over 100 tackles, was just all over the field, Mr. Everything for Indiana. One is a guy that produced, and two is a guy that kind of set that standard and brought that culture over that they have talked about so much. So obviously he's on the field as much as he wants to be. Next to him, you have two interesting options. You have Elijah Hardy, who really came out of nowhere. He has that kind of knack. He's like Marcus Oliver from like early 2010s, mid 2010s, where the ball kind of just like found him. Like if it was on the ground, it just like took 3 bounces and was in his lap. Or if he like put his hand in there, the ball seemed to come out. I think that's what Hardy has. He has that weird innate, I don't know if it's like a, college football 26 like ability or badge or whatever they call it, X factor, where he just like gets the ball all the time. But it seems like that's what happens. Even in the spring game, he had an interception. And Isaiah Jones, who kind of fell out of favor in the Tom Allen defense and then worked his way into the rotation under Signetti, which I think is telling in itself. But two good options. I think they're a little bit more similar. Jalen Walker obviously was a really good compliment to Fisher, just without how athletic he was. He could play the pass game. He could blitz. He could do a lot of stuff. I think Hardy and Jones are probably more solid up the middle in the run game. But Walker's a big loss. I don't think people are talking about that enough. So he's with the Raiders right now for training camp. Are you team Hardy or team Jones, though, if you had to pick one to start the season? Obviously, they're both going to play.
Yeah, I think they're both going to play. And obviously, it's nice to have that number one of Aiden Fisher that this guy is just going to be behind. But I think I lean team Hardy, and it's truly just because, like you mentioned, that badge of just knowing where to be, always somehow appearing to be in the right spot. I just have like a certain knack for that kind of player that always seems to find his way to where he is supposed to be. It's just like an innate talent that they're able to pull out. I think I lean Hardy. Obviously, we'll see both. Hardy obviously made a solid impact last year, showed some flashes, and I feel like if he had a good offseason, like we've potentially heard a couple times, I think he could be the guy to kind of step in. But yeah, it's definitely a loss to lose Walker. If anything, he was just a guy that he can be in the middle of the field, and with his speed, he was able to get to the sideline so fast. And you throw a bubble screen, and suddenly the corners gets blocked, but there's Jalen Walker being able to make a tackle. So I kind of think that maybe Hardy will be able to fill that role. I don't think he's as fast, but he just has that knack for being in the right place at the right time, and that's what kind of gives me the edge at this point to him.
Yeah, I like it. I think I would agree. Although Bones Jones was pretty steady last year too, so we'll see. All right, third in a row defense. Mikhail Kamara obviously is back again. Another guy all over the list, all over the preseason honors, blah blah blah. Everybody's talking about him. He was in Vegas. Who's next to him? I think that's a big question as well. And Carr is gone. who he had a pretty good season last year. Jacob Mangum-Farrar was in the mix a little bit too. Who was the other guy?
I guess Carpenter was inside more
Yeah,
often.
yeah.
I don't know what there was. I think the defensive line in general. I guess if we're
Landino, yeah. I mean, they
yeah,
played a couple guys at edge, but yeah, I think that's an interesting one. Is who is at edge opposite Kamara?
yeah, and we've also got a little bit of a position change with Kamara, where he was just on the edge last year. He's going to what they call the stud position this year, so kind of float around, look for those one-on-one matchups, and could also potentially see him in coverage a little bit this year, which would be adding a little bit to his game. I kind of prefer just if we're a little bit short on D end guys, I would prefer that maybe Kamara is always rushing the passer, but again, to kind of prove that he has that NFL draft stock, I think that's something that's going to be asked of him. And I also think if Sig and the staff are asking him to do this, they think it's just something that he's able to do, and they're not going to put him in a position where he's going to fail. So we'll kind of see him moving around the field more often than we did last year. And I think it's a very interesting position battle behind him. There's plenty of names, plenty of guys. I don't necessarily know where it's going to ultimately go. And I think this is another position where it's a big reason why you should be watching those very first 3 non-conference games, to kind of see the guys that are jumping off of tape, are getting the start off the bat. So maybe they have that early edge in fall camp. It really could go any way. But again, I think we've kind of said this at all levels of the defense so far. It's nice to have that number one guy. You've got that number one guy in Pons. You got the number one guy in Fisher. You got the number one guy in Kamara. And I think a little bit when you've got those 3, there's a little bit of we can figure out the rest.
Yeah, definitely. I think Stephen Daly, Kent State transfer. So hopefully he has the same impact CJ West had from Kent State. Is one. Couple freshmen I think could play too. So I mean, we'll see. It's going to be pretty interesting. I don't know. That's one I'm watching for too, especially though, like we've talked about in those non-conference games early in the season. All right, switching sides of the ball. You have your two number one receivers back. So again, with your theme there, Nate, you have kind of your top guys back at receiver. So Elijah Surratt, Omar Cooper are both back. They both had really great seasons last year. Omar Cooper was awesome after kind of, we all saw it in the Tom Allen offense, right? And we were like, this guy could be so good if you just put him in a decent system and let him just make plays. He was so good at those back shoulder balls. Obviously, he's just highly explosive. So he had an awesome season. And I think he's going to have an even better season this year. Do either one of them hit 1,000 yards receiving this year? Elijah Surratt had 957 last year. Omar Cooper had 594 last year.
I'm not going to doubt Surratt, right? Like, I think I just have to pick Surratt as going to be over 1,000 yards. I don't see him regressing this season. I think if I had a comp for him, I think he's Keenan Allen. That's what has always come to mind, I guess, before last year on the Bears, of just kind of being old and slow Keenan Allen. I think more of the Chargers Keenan Allen, of he just has a knack for getting open. He has a knack for being able to catch that ball over the middle and take a hit because he's got the big body, but he's also got that breakaway. Like I picture the pass against Michigan last year where our very first touchdown of the game, where he just broke loose. And you think about another one in the Purdue game where he was streaking down the sideline. I think Surratt is probably the guy to go over 1,000 yards, but it could also be a situation, we talked about it, where you've got the number 2 question marks on the defensive side of the ball. It might be a situation where when defenses are game planning against this offense, maybe it's we'll bottle up Surratt and Cooper gets loose and Cooper ends up being the breakout one this year. I don't doubt it, because he's improved every single year, and I do think he truly has top level NFL caliber talent. But it's just great to have 2 of those guys that you're talking about in this situation.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to go with, I don't know if either one hits 1,000 yards.
But if you had to pick.
Say it again.
But if you had to pick.
Yeah. If I had to pick, it's tough. Again, now that there's a year of tape on our guys in our system, like, I think they're going to be all over Surratt, and he's a really good contested catch guy. He can run a variety of different routes. I'm not worried about him like getting open and catching the ball. But I mean, I think there's going to be guys all over him. Like, I think teams are going to blanket him and force Holden Stays, Mekhi Jackson, Jonathan Brady, these other guys to make plays, EJ Williams. Like, some of these guys are going to have to make plays outside of Surratt. Cooper, I think, should get a lot of one-on-ones. He did really well, like we said, on some of those back shoulder balls last year. Torched Nebraska on it. He was just outstanding. Michigan, he had the touchdown on the back shoulder ball.
Yep.
So I think Cooper is going to definitely have more than 594 yards. Surratt had 8 touchdowns. Cooper had 7 touchdowns receiving. I think they'll have probably like a 50-50 split touchdown-wise. But I don't know. I might say Cooper has a better chance of hitting 1,000 yards. I just think big playability, they're really going to try to take Surratt away and make him more of a chain mover, which should hopefully open up other guys to kind of be the top off the defense guys. Again, good problem to have that we're even talking about that. I feel like weapon-wise, we haven't really been able to say that about IU in a while. So to have a couple legit, I would start on every Big Ten team, guys, I think is awesome. So we will
spot to be in.
All right. I just said touchdowns. So we're talking touchdowns. Elijah Surratt, Roman Hemby comes in from Maryland. We've seen him score in Memorial Stadium. We've seen him had good games in the Big Ten before. I'm excited to watch him play for us behind a better offensive line and in a good system. If you had to pick touchdowns, Surratt or Hemby? Surratt had 8 receiving last year. Hemby had 6 on the ground, 1 through the air. I think Surratt had 1 rushing touchdown too. Is that right? Or am I making that up? Or was it like a shovel? Was it like a pop?
It might have been I can't remember. I do remember the play, but I can't remember if it was. Yeah.
So anyways, at least 8. Hemby had at least 7. If you had to pick one for more touchdowns this season, who would you go with?
I think I lean Hemby here, and it's truly just because I could see some situations where, especially in the first 3 games, there might be a little bit of, we don't need to show everything on offense with the Illinois game coming up. Let's run the ball, and suddenly Hemby got loose again. Oh, he got loose again against Indiana State. Like, I could just see a couple of stat padding right at the beginning, and it's not even stat padding. It's just, I'm better than you.
Yeah.
And he's just such a consistent guy too. I guess really with Surratt and Hemby in this question, it's why it's a good question of, they're both very consistent. They're going to be on the field. I think past 3 years, Hemby's had 150 plus carries at every single one of those years. And that's playing against a Big Ten schedule. So he knows what it's like to play in the Big Ten. I just ultimately think it will be Hemby. I think last year we felt pretty good about where the wide receivers were going to stack up. And then we were like, we've got some guys that I feel pretty good about in the running back room, and we'll kind of see how it goes. And then suddenly there were more touchdowns than I think any other Indiana football season on the ground last year was in 2024. So I could see Hemby kind of having similar success there and truly just finding the end zone a lot.
But remember, we have not played a defense like Nebraska's, so I don't know.
I
don't know if we'll be able to run the ball. Last year. So, I would go Hemby too. I think they might try to unlock him a little bit in the receiving game. I think that's kind of an untapped aspect of his game. We've seen him do it at Maryland, and I think that might be a little Shanahan wrinkle that they pull out in maybe some of those tougher road environments. As a way to move the chain and get positive momentum going. But we'll see. 4 quarters of blank football. Pat Coogan comes here from Notre Dame. So obviously IU played against him. He talked pretty highly about IU and their defense after the playoff game. And then, of course, after he committed and signed and all that good stuff. He kind of went viral last year. 1, he was a really good player, but 2, his kind of pregame speeches with his helmet off, riling up the offensive line, about imposing our will and being sound and dominating and all that good stuff. I think that's great. And I think IU has some of those guys, but it's always good to have a leader on the offensive line. So beyond like the emotional side of it, Nate, I think getting Coogan was a big win, just perception wise, and then just fit to keep everybody kind of in their same spots on the offensive line.
Yeah. And a year ago, we were talking about how big it was to get Kadick back, because you got a guy with experience that's played some big time football. And he slid right back into that center position and was solid the entire year. And I think honestly, we've kind of upgraded there. So two big transfers from the Notre Dame offensive line this past season, and Coogan heads to IU, which is one of them. And I'm super excited for him, honestly. I'm excited to see his first pump up speech for all of our guys. 4 quarters of FU football. Like, let's play. Yeah.
Yep. Agree. That'll be a fascinating one to watch for sure. All right. 10 down, 20 to go. Number 11. You just said you're really excited. Is there too much hype? Is there too much excitement? We've seen this before. Following IU's good season under Tom Allen, they came in ranked in the preseason with Michael Penix back. You were like, here we go. We have a good roster. We have, maybe the best quarterback in the Big Ten, like feeling good. Defense played really well. And then the wheels came off pretty much immediately. The Iowa game was a disaster, and IU really never regained its footing. And then, it took a little bit longer than maybe it should have, but it ended up with Allen switching back to coordinator position. So
yeah,
it's an uncomfortable position, I think, for me and some IU football fans, just because we're not necessarily used to it. But is there too much hype right now, Nate, around the team?
Well, I think I might have to go back to number one. And the very first thing that we talked about was our sellouts and how there aren't any yet. So I'm going to say no. There's not enough hype right now. Let's keep getting the excitement. Let's keep pushing this. Sig knew from the very first day that he stepped on campus here that it's kind of an uphill battle at Indiana, because even you and me that are just the most passionate Indiana football guys that you can possibly find still have that thing in the back of our mind that are like, oh crap, like we had a great year in 2020. We went into 2021 ranked. This will be the first time since then. And I imagine once the polls come out that we'll be ranked again heading into the season. It just feels like an uncomfortable position. And I think as a fan base, you just have to continue to believe when what you've seen from Sig, what you've seen from this entire coaching staff. There's enough guys that are coming back from last year that should give you confidence going into this year that things can continue in a relatively decent path. Like I started it off, I do feel like this is potentially a more talented roster. If anything, it's been a roster that Cignetti and his staff has had more time to actually put together. If we remember when he was hired, he basically was like, all right, now I've got about 10 guys on this roster and I've got to fill everything in the next 14 days. That is not true with this year. He has had the time to put in thought. He's had that staff continuity. I think I'm not worried about the hype at this point. I think we can still, it's not necessarily that false hype that we felt in the past. So I don't think there's too much hype.
All right. I like it. Yeah. I don't know. Just makes me a little,
yeah, it's the thing in the back of your mind. But
well, and then it's just, all the national people, blah, 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 IU, blah, blah, blah. I just don't want those people to be right, more than anything. So, that would stink. But I think the roster's talented. I don't see a ton of regression. If everything kind of goes how it's supposed to and you avoid, major injuries and all that stuff like every team hopes for. But yeah, I don't know. I'd agree with you. I think it's okay to get excited and it's okay to have fun. And I think that's something that people need to remember about football and Indiana football. But yeah, 30 days till kick.
It's a position we're not usually in,
Yeah, that's right.
It freaks us out.
That's true. It's true. All right. The opener, like we just said, 30 days away, Fox Sports 1 against Old Dominion. Interesting opener. They were 5-7 last year, 4-4 in the Sun Belt. They returned some interesting pieces. Obviously, like a lot of mid-major college football programs right now, lost a ton of guys to the portal. Pretty new to the D1 ranks. I think this will be like their 12th season in the FBS. So they'll be up here to end August. And for IU to see what's in store for an encore after going 11-2 and making the college football playoff last season. Interesting opener though, Nate. They have 4 guys on preseason all Sun Belt team. They have 2 first teamers, 2 second teamers. Their linebacker duo is probably one of the best you'll see in the group of 5. So Zach Henderson, who missed all of last season basically except for one game, actually led the country in tackles per game in both 2023 and 2024. So he's back. They're expecting him to kind of be full steam ahead. And then I'm going to totally botch this name, but Koa Nawatala is their other linebacker. He had 88 tackles last year. He led them in tackles. He checks in on the second team preseason All Sun Belt. So that's a really good linebacker duo there. You have Zach Barlev, who plays tackle for them, former Illinois guy, had a really good season on their offensive line. So he's a first team guy. And then Chris Trinidad, who's a defensive end. I think he had like 6 sacks last year. He's back, big dude, strong dude. Defense, has some players, has some pieces. IU gets Grant Wilson, who was their backup quarterback last year, to transfer in. Probably is IU's like 2 or 3 quarterback, so maybe he has some insight. They also returned Colton Joseph, who was their starting quarterback for kind of the back half of last season. Started 8 games, threw just over 1,500 yards, 11 touchdowns, 5 picks. He's a really good runner, so he ran for like basically 700 yards on like 110 carries with 11 rushing touchdowns. I mean, he's a guy just like Dexter Williams, who will play in week 2, who's definitely mobile and can use his legs. That gave IU a lot of problems last year. Not necessarily the designed quarterback runs, but more so extending plays, getting out of the pocket. Like Riley Leonard killed us in the playoff game by doing that. So I think from that angle, it will kind of be an interesting test. But yeah, they have some players. I think it's definitely not Indiana State. It's definitely not Illinois. Probably somewhere, lower middle pack of group of 5 teams, I would say.
Yeah, I think you nailed most of the storylines there. I don't have much else to say on ODU, but yeah, it'll definitely be a trickier opener. It should be eventually just, hey, we've got Big Ten talent and you've got Sun Belt talent, and that should ultimately prevail. But it won't be the easiest, and you have the very first game. You always run the risk of, you've only done this kind of thing in fall camp or spring ball, so now it's really on the field. You're doing it against a live offense, not one that you see every single day. So there's always those instances where you're just like, like 6 games in, you would have never made that mistake, but the very first game, potentially that pops up. Even if you think about last year with how great the season was, the opener was solid. It was not our best football that we played, definitely. So it's one that they will definitely have to show up for. ODU lost a lot of close games last year, so it's kind of, if you can flip that
games. Yep.
If you can flip that the other way, you would probably be more worried about this game if that 5-7 became an 8-4 or something, where you just change the result of just a few games. So it'll be interesting to watch. Again, I expect it to be 1-0 and moving on to the next week ultimately, but it'll be a good opener.
Yeah, for sure. They 2 power games last year. They were in a ton of 1-score games. So I think by my count, like 8, counting wins and losses, which is interesting. They opened at South Carolina last year. They lost 23-19. So right in that game, obviously South Carolina was the best team in college football history last season.
Obviously,
went on an awesome playoff run and won the national championship. So
yeah,
good performance for Old Dominion there. Their other power games, that was week 1. So again, mixed bag in week 1, I think, across the country. And then in like week 3 or week 4, they played at Virginia Tech and they lost 37-17. So, week 3, you would expect the power teams to kind of get their footing. I guess both teams to get their footing, but I mean, they gave South Carolina a little scare last year to open the season. So obviously Cignetti already talked about that at media days. He said they need to be ready to play. So, I'm sure by the time kickoff rolls around, they will be ready.
For sure.
Going from schedule to kicking, Nico Radicic was amazing last season. He was 10 of 11 on field goals in his first year, kind of as the full-time place kicker, because he was banged up his redshirt or his freshman season. He was 69 of 69 on extra points. Nice. Yep. So he had to set the single season program record there. He's already like rocketed up IU's all-time like scoring list, which is cool. So for a guy that they didn't really trust him with his range, I think as long as like 41 last year, he really didn't attempt anything super long. I think that's an area of improvement maybe, but I think if you got the same season you had last year, you would take that right now and run.
100%. And the kicker position is such an interesting one in that, like, just the confidence of I've been in those games and I've made these kicks
Yep.
before matters so much just with these 18 to 22-year-old kickers. You've run into the issues where it's just like, yeah, I've got the leg, but I kind of have the yips. And like
Mhm.
you mentioned, he was he had 13 field goals or whatever last year. Like, you miss a couple of those and suddenly you can get into your head and you just don't have that many opportunities to get back in there and really take away those bad thoughts that you've got in the
Yep.
back of your mind. But he's entering the season, you would think, with a clean slate. He had one of the best seasons all time for an Indiana kicker. So I think we should be in a good spot there. Yeah.
Yeah, agree. So yeah, I mean, he made a kick in the playoff game. He made some clutch ones against Michigan down the stretch in that game. So, they weren't all mop up duty. I think they put him out there in moments he needed to make kicks. Obviously, IU had a lot of lopsided wins last year, which was awesome. But he had a great year. Nate, this one's all you.
Well, I think you know my opinion on it. It's unfortunately not the opinion I think of most of the fan base. But number 14, premiering in 30 days. You've seen lots of teasers. You've seen some, I guess, figurines, characters, or whatever that you want to call them online. Hoosier the Bison. He returns. We have not had a mascot for years. I have always liked that. I am one of the few people, it seems like, that has always absolutely loved that Indiana does not have a mascot. I've never seen the need for a mascot. This is not an Indiana thing. This is truly Indiana, any sport. I've never been a person that's been like, oh, thank God I get to go to the Bulls game and see Benny the Bull. I get to go see blank. Like, no, I truly have only wanted to, yeah, you're wearing the Benny the Bull shirt. So, I know I am in the minority here. I think I'm just about, it feels like one of the few, but Hoosier the Bison will premiere in 30 days. I guess that is exciting for some, so I'm happy for them and the kids.
Yeah, all about the kiddos.
And
My
selling
thing,
merchandise.
I'm a mascot guy. I like them. They're pretty funny. The San Francisco Giants mascot went in the Hall of Fame, so this big thing for him on Sunday or a couple days ago. It was pretty funny, so look that up.
Will do.
Yeah, but my thing is I just don't want him to wear candy stripe pants to the football games. So it's I think they said what he wears on the top will be different, but it's just because the graphic or the logo you made of him had candy stripe pants on doesn't mean he needs to wear candy stripe pants when it's 110 degrees out on August 31st. He probably will. So I'm already getting upset about this for no reason. But anyway, we'll move on. Yeah. Halfway
also,
through.
Hoosier's a bad name. All right, carry on.
Yeah, Hoosier. Yeah, they could have done better there.
Number 15.
Old friends in same places. Lewis Moore and Khalil Benson are back. They survived the Tom Allen eras, went their separate ways, and then decided they wanted to come back. This will be their last seasons each. Both, I think, expecting to play pretty good roles for IU. Who's going to have a bigger impact, though, Nate?
I am going back to, I didn't want to say this earlier because I knew we had this coming up. So when we were talking about linebackers, we were talking through Elijah Hardy, and we were talking about how he just has a knack for the ball.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
Lewis Moore was one of those few on the Indiana defense under Tom Allen that I was just like, how are you always in the right spot? It seems like, I mean, there were definitely times at the end of the Allen era that it seemed like just about every single person on that Indiana defense was confused about where they should be and what the play was and all that kind of stuff. Lewis Moore was not that guy. I loved him. He was one of my favorite players. And then ironically, he transferred to Ole Miss, who was where I went for grad school. So he didn't play much there because he kind of battled injuries and stuff. But back, I was very excited to have him back. I know there are a lot of questions, I guess, going into this season of what exactly is going to happen at the safety position, which I think we're going to talk about later. I've kind of felt like Lewis Moore will be a guy that can kind of fill in there, and he just has a knack for the ball.
Yeah, agree. He's, again, I don't know what it is, but he was after IU would lose games when he was on the team, he was distraught, and you could see it on the field, and he even regardless of what the record was, when they lost that Purdue game, he was distraught on the field because they blew it, and but he, again, same thing, he seemed to always kind of just be around the ball, always making plays. It was interesting though. He like commit to IU and then he still played in the bowl game for Ole Miss. So the whole time I was watching that game, I was like, just you're good, man. Just like don't
Yeah,
just like
stay healthy.
let him go
You're
out of
fine. It's
bounds or
good.
whatever. You're fine. You don't need to get in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, experienced guy. IU has a lot of new guys and some younger guys in the secondary. So having a guy that's played a lot of college football is always a good thing.
Yep.
We talked kicker. Now we talk punter. James Evans is out. Mitch McCarthy from UCF, is in. He's a big dude.
He is a big dude. If we were doing this podcast about 24 hours ago, I would say he needed to go into Assembly Hall because we've been looking for a center, but we now have that hole filled, obviously, so we're all good there. So he can return to his regular duties as a punter. Evans was the highs of James Evans was one that I was like, yeah, this is a solid college punter. It's one that I can have some confidence in. The lows were much lower than I think a college punter at the Big Ten level should ever be.
Yep.
So I think if anything, we're just getting more consistency at the position. We're going to be in a good spot. I don't necessarily feel, a lot of the time I think we were opting not to punt because we kind of had some faith in our offense, but I think there were times we were opting not to punt because we didn't necessarily have faith in our punting game last year.
Yep.
So I think just having a little bit more consistency there, and it's always nice to see a big kicker. Like that's just great.
Yeah, absolutely. So he was really solid last year. I think Evans definitely had his drawbacks. Overall, I think he was fine during his career. Essentially you just don't want to really mention his name that much. Like he didn't have to punt that much and you still talked about him, I felt like, every game, which was not great.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I think hopefully that improves. Like you can't lose games because of your punter. I'm not going to say IU lost the Ohio State game because of the punter on his own, but he certainly did not help.
Definitely made it much more uphill than it needed to be. So
he did not help the cause there.
Yeah.
Okay, quick pause here. For those that aren't aware, we are independent again, which means, we're kind of back to, more articles, more coverage, all this stuff. So HoosierHuddle.com is back to kind of our home base for all things IU football. We're talking basketball now. We're talking baseball now. We're talking women's hoops, soccer, all this good stuff now. We're running a summer special right now. It runs until kickoff of the Old Dominion game, so August 31st. $15 gets you 12 months, so it doesn't get you a season. It doesn't get you until December. It doesn't get you until 2026. It gets you 12 months. That's going to get you our stuff behind paywalls, so reaching out to recruits, which we're doing a much better job at now. Insights on the depth chart, injuries, scoops, all that kind of stuff. Our staff is active on the boards, interacting with folks, fantasy leagues, other sites of content, all that kind of stuff. One kind of just helps us, remain independent and do all this kind of stuff. And then two, helps us like upgrade the site, helps us send people to road games, helps us cover the team, the players, the stories better, which in turn hopefully makes it better for everybody else. So again, $15 gets you a full year. You don't need a code or anything. Just make an account at HoosierHuddle.com and take advantage of that now before the season starts. All right, back to topics because we have quite a few to go here, Nate. Game you have circled, number 17 out of 30 here. I'll start on this one. I think I know what you're going to say. I'm going to say I have the Iowa game at Iowa week 5 circled. I think it's an interesting one because that's obviously it's your first road game. It's a place IU has struggled in historically. Iowa is always just fundamentally solid, and they're very tough to beat at home. So I think if you're able to beat Illinois, which I think IU right now is favored by like 5 points or something I saw, which I think IU can definitely beat Illinois, that game becomes kind of like a trap game. Like I think everyone right now is pointing to Illinois, and they're like, you got to beat Illinois. You got to get through Illinois, yada, yada, which I get, and it's true. But I think if you beat Illinois and then go on the road and lay an egg against Iowa before your bye week, kind of undoes a lot of the momentum. So they play Iowa, then they have a bye, and then they go to Eugene. So that's like a huge 3-game stretch: home against Illinois, at Iowa, bye, and then at Oregon. So I think for me, it's, can you get 2 out of 3 of those? And I think the most likely combination is you beat Illinois at home and Iowa on the road.
All right. I love it. I think I've kind of previewed it earlier, and we've talked about this offline. So yeah, I'm going to go the game right before it is the Illinois game. It's the one that I think that's when we will truly see, is this roster clicking against Big Ten opponents? Is this roster, because both teams are very interesting. They come into the season where they've historically basketball schools, honestly, come into last year, have very strong seasons. IU obviously makes it to the college football playoff. Illinois falls just outside, goes to play a bowl game against South Carolina, beats the SEC team in the bowl game. So they come into this season with a lot of momentum as well.
Yeah.
I think it's truly, I guess when you're talking about this, you're talking about the game that you have circled is truly just, where could you see like the air going out on the entire season? And I feel like if it's just that very first game that we've got at home that's like very, very big, and suddenly it's just like, oh, they didn't really look good. And I could see just like the hype being all gone right there. I totally understand your point of maybe you beat Illinois and then you get kind of big heads and go to Iowa where you've played bad in the past. And I mean, we've already talked about the 2021 opener as we threw that pick 6 and that it was like, oh, the game's over. The season's deflated and let's just move on. I can see the potential happening there because Iowa's just a tricky place to play, but I think I just go to the Illinois game. I think it could kind of flip things of, if we can have another really good home crowd, if we can see a good win, it kind of could just fuel the rest of your season.
Yeah, definitely one I want to win real bad.
Yeah. I think
for me, it's like if you lose the Illinois game and then you go on the road and beat Iowa, everyone's like, oh, all right, well, that's pretty good. Then you go into the bye week and then you get ready for Oregon, which is going to be obviously a monster test. IU want to know all time in Eugene. People do forget that. 18. A lot of Fernando Mendoza first round hype. Seeing, some Twitter draft guys who, some of those people do pretty good stuff, but a lot of hype around Fernando Mendoza as a guy potentially that could go in the first round, which in a really good quarterback class in the NFL draft this coming year, or it's projected to be at least. Yeah. Kind of surprising to me, but I don't know, Nate, what do you think?
Yeah, I always kind of get sucked into this kind of stuff. I was a guy that in the past would always put together my own first round mocks and just be like trying to put my best guesses together of what I think will happen when it gets to NFL draft season. I think you always have to go, if Indiana's going to break their streak, which we looked this up right before, is 94 was the last time that Indiana had a first round draft pick. So has not been in either of our lifetimes. So if we're able to draft that or break that draft streak, I imagine it would have to happen at either the quarterback position or an offensive line position, just because it feels like those are guys that even if maybe they're second or third round talents, they are so needed in the NFL that they can kind of bump up, and suddenly a guy that you don't necessarily think you've got to throw a flyer at, and especially at the quarterback position, you can see 6 or 7 go off the board all of a sudden because it's just such an important position. And if you draft them in the first round, you get that bonus year of they'll be under contract. So all that kind of things that go with it. So Fernando Mendoza is the name that comes to mind, obviously for IU at quarterback, of if he can have another really good year behind what you would imagine would be a much better offensive line than what he had at Cal, can show his accuracy, can stand in the pocket and deliver under pressure, can also show that he can move around. Suddenly that's a guy that could move up draft boards. And then I mentioned the better offensive line. You could see a guy, I feel like Carter Smith just kind of flies under the radar. And if it's a guy that's going to rise up the boards, it's going to be an offensive tackle. And he's another one that we've talked about, the guys that are in the spotlight. You almost want your left tackle not to be in the spotlight, because typically when you really know his name well, it's because he's like incredible and he makes all the headlines or whatever, or he's a guy that's just getting destroyed every week. And more often it's the latter. If it's just like, God, I wish we had a different left tackle, that would change our entire season. Smith's the opposite there. He's been a stable at that position from the very beginning when he stepped foot on campus. I don't know if we break the first round drought. That's why it's a question, but I think it's one of our best shots that we've had in, honestly, probably our lifetime.
Yeah, definitely. I think everybody that is draft eligible, that has more eligibility, they're going to have so much fun this season that none of them are going to declare.
Oh, perfect.
So,
yeah.
We could have had 8 first-round draft picks, but everybody, Pons
Wants
is
to
like,
come
you know
back
what,
and-
this was so fun. I'm not relieving. Kamara gets a waiver for another year. That's my prediction. Everybody just has such a good time that they don't want to go to the draft.
Love it.
This has been the flavor of the week on IU football Twitter, which it seems to be a different thing every week, which is fun. Thunderstruck getting some heat. So discussions, at least in the fan circles, of what's the song a team should run out to. My stance continues to be that Thunderstruck is so overdone and so overplayed that it has no legitimate meaning or connection to anybody. It definitely doesn't have connection to IU because they just started it last year. So I'm in the heavy nay category. I think they could do something way cooler, something unique. You see all these teams play songs after the third quarter ends and they have cool runouts, and IU made a lot of good progress last year, but I think Thunderstruck was literally the most generic, we built a stadium on a video game and that was the top song that was chosen or something. So I'm nay. Some of the suggestions I thought were pretty funny, or pretty good, but I'd like to see them try something that we could own a little bit more and kind of make our own. I just feel like Thunderstruck, the White Sox used to run out to that. Northern Illinois used to run out to that. I feel like hundreds of teams use Thunderstruck just in a variety of settings, and I feel like they could do better.
Yeah, I think my biggest gripe with it, I don't remember how many games I was at last year. I'm going to say 3 or 4. And the biggest gripe I had was it just feels like you've got the towels, so you want to be spinning that, but you don't necessarily. I feel like we could have something that you're chanting, something that you're saying, something that gets the hype vocally a little bit more than just every once in a while yelling thunder and just going ah. I just think there could be something that gets the fans vocally a little more involved in it. I guess we both probably could have come in here with some great ideas instead of just being critical about it, which I guess I don't. I've seen many men thrown out there. I'm sure people would get hyped about that. I should have come with, they should be doing XYZ instead. I did not. I'm just going to say I'm probably nay, and it won't tear me up that if they do change it, I won't be like, oh, they switched away from Thunderstruck. It could be better. And I love the intros in general. Those are great parts of the games and part of the fan experience. So
yeah, whatever they choose, I'll be at the opener. Whatever they choose, I will be probably 2 game day loggers, just screaming whatever song they decide to go with. So
yep.
But yeah, I think I'm in the nay category. I'd be in favor of a switch. All right, almost home. Number 20, facility improvements are coming along slowly but surely. New turf obviously looks just beautiful. They did an awesome job with that. End zones maybe a little bit plain, but I love the clean classic look. The mini logos on the 35-yard line are awesome. That's probably my favorite thing that they did, which is stupid but really good. Mellencamp, we've seen some pictures. So our friend Respectable Adam, as always, is just all over that stuff. He had a bunch of pictures of the turf is up. Looks like they're redoing the lighting. Baseball is getting new turf. Oh my gosh.
You won't be hearing that anymore.
Covering all the practices and pro days in there. That sound is just, mosquitoes, thousands of mosquitoes in there. It sounded like.
I think that's the biggest thing. Is just getting some lighting and into the 21st century feels huge. And it's also something I think that when recruits come on campus in the past, we've kind of been like, oh yeah, and our practice facilities over there, but look over here, here.
Yeah.
It feels like something.
There's something there's a different event in there, so we can't go in there.
Yeah,
it's sweet.
But Mellencamp did it.
You're gonna love it. Yeah,
it's gonna be great. You're gonna have some of the best times of your life in there.
Ever heard of John Mellencamp, buddy? Yeah, you're gonna love this.
Yeah, and then we just continued on. It was like, oh, look how nice the stadium is. So yeah, I think it will. If anything, it's just nice we can walk recruits through there. We can record, pressers after the practices and stuff, and you won't hear that buzzing. It looks a little more modern. Looks like it got a paint job from some of the photos that I've seen. And yeah, when you move into Memorial Stadium, the IU logos on the 35 are great. That was a great touch.
Yep. My other wish list items for Memorial Stadium, like they have to put up some sort of college football playoff stuff. Like making it banners, whatever they want to do, they have to put something up. I think that's a must. I would like to see them for the bicentennial of the university. They had those red wraps kind of on the base of the limestone around the field. I'd like to see them add something back there. I thought that looked cool with just a little more pop of color. The scoreboard gap, I don't think is ever going to go away. That's my.
Have you ever mentioned that?
Oh my gosh! I hope people know what I'm talking about. For those that have listened to me on this before, but the scoreboard on the south end zone, so the newer side of the stadium, the scoreboard has this big black bar in between where the scoreboard stops and the limestone starts. I think it's speakers.
Yeah, I think it's all speakers.
It looks so ugly that it doesn't go all the way flush up to the limestone. It drives me absolutely insane every time I'm at the stadium or anytime I see a highlight. I wish they would have just put the speakers on the side or added them on the top or something. It just looks so terrible to me. So one day, hopefully that gets fixed. But yeah, I think at the very least, definitely college football playoff branding. I'd love to see them redo the All-America banners. Those got really faded. That's just totally disrespectful to guys that were awesome players, that their banners are faded and torn up and taken down.
And you got some guys to add. So
yeah, and got some guys to add now. And then on the other side where the USS Indiana is, they used to have a wrap around that too. That wasn't there last season. So stuff like that. I just think now they have more eyes on the stadium and TV trucks and people coming maybe to their first game. That stuff matters. So I'd like to see them focus on that again.
Yep.
Virginia canceled. That was the flavor of the week, maybe 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yep. So went from that to Thunderstruck. Who knows what's going to be this week? IU got out of
this podcast.
Yeah, could be. Hopefully, you never know. IU gets out of the UVA game. All the SEC bros were really loving that one. Cignetti talked about it at Media Days, said he adopted an SEC scheduling philosophy. I'm fine with it. I don't care. I think IU's at a point they need the home game that season, and IU needs 3 wins in the non-conference. If the Big Ten is going to continue to be a really tough conference to play in, 1, you need the extra home game in the non-conference schedule, and 2, it just makes a lot of sense in terms of seeing more of your roster, not getting as banged up, all that kind of stuff. So college football playoff discussion, you're not gaining anything by beating Virginia anyway. You are knocking yourself out of the playoff if you lose to Virginia. So for me, the upside play of that game just doesn't make sense to me. And for the people that are oh, well, we would have sold out the Virginia game if that was the opener. No, you wouldn't have. Virginia is not moving the needle that much more than Old Dominion, where you're running and scrambling to buy tickets. So
yeah, and
I don't know. I'm fine. I would like to keep the Notre Dame series. They have that one on kind of at the end of the decade. I'm in favor of keeping that, but for keeping kind of a program that was a lot like IU before last season on the schedule, I just don't think it does you much good.
Yeah, I think there's absolutely no upside, especially when you flash over to the SEC and they only have to play 8 conference games, and they got those 4 out of conference, and especially one of them coming just in the middle of November, it feels like typically.
Yep.
I think there's no reason to ever play this series, but it was nice that it feels like that's a talking point of Indiana football that definitely made national headlines. It was one that I got stopped in the office a couple of times. It's what's Indiana doing with the UVA series? And it's absolutely no reason to play it. So,
yep.
I think it was a good move. And if we had other series like it on the upcoming calendar, I would support doing the exact same thing again. So,
yep, for sure. I agree. All right. Totally different player from last year's team you wish had one more season and we're back on the roster this year. I'll let you go first. I have mine, but I'm curious who you say.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what yours is. I was going CJ West. I think he is a guy that I feel decent about it. I mean, we've talked through the defensive line a bit, so you kind of know our feelings there. He's just a guy that I think went under the radar of how important he truly was there. was able to be productive in pass rushing, but I think it, again, was just a guy that every single team would have to game plan against. And he was so good against the run, just such a big body that could clog multiple different lanes, take different gaps, and just one that I think back to the Michigan game where it was like, man, I think Michigan really just wants to ground and pound because obviously they didn't have any quarterbacks on their roster. Sorry, Jack Tuttle. And so he was just a guy that like, yeah, but you're going to have to run against West and he's going to clog a couple different lanes and suddenly it's going to be third down. You're going to be in a passing situation. He's just one that I would absolutely love. I knew it was his last year, but I wish he had one more to come back.
Yeah, that's a good one. I thought about that. The one like brief one I would say it's just going to sound crazy is Rourke. It's not my actual pick, but
That's
like
fair.
I'm very excited for Mendoza, but like if you could just take exactly what you got from Rourke last season again this year, I think you would take it. Like it's so hard to find like legitimately great quarterback play in college.
Yeah, and you imagine his ACL
if he
would
was
be
healthy,
intact,
right? Yeah,
so,
he
like,
would have
that'd be cool.
He would have a thumb and a knee, so like that would probably help.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm really excited for Mendoza though. So that would not be my pick. Mine, I mentioned it earlier in the show, but Jalen Walker I think would be my pick.
Okay.
Again, I think Jones and Hardy are good, and they're going to be good. But Walker did so many things. I thought he was kind of the perfect complement to Fisher at linebacker. He was able to, play more pass coverage, roam a little bit more, and that let Fisher kind of just be in the middle of the field and around the line all the time, which is why he had like 120 tackles and he seemed to be like on the ball every single play.
Yeah.
So that'd be my pick. But I think, that's going to be interesting at linebacker to see what IU does there.
Outside of Rourke, did you consider really any offensive players?
Thought about it. I liked Williams. I liked Cross. Horton, I think, obviously was really good. I think right tackle is interesting too. Like Weddich was really solid last year as well. But no, I think for me, it's like the offense. I think I see the vision and where guys will fit in more than the defense right now.
Yep, I was in the exact same spot where I was like, I mean, there were guys I definitely loved on the offense last year, but I don't think if I only got to pick one, my mind immediately goes to the defensive side of the ball.
I agree. I think that's the right way to think about it. 23, Black Friday bucket game. My plan is to be there. I think it's sweet. It'll be a primetime standalone game, probably on NBC, which is cool. I'm fine. Like they can move it to Friday. They can keep it on Saturday. As long as it's at the end of the season, I'm good with it. I think it'll be cool. Like weather's probably going to be terrible like it always is in West Lafayette. It's going to smell bad. Everyone's going to have a headache. Everyone's going to be crabby. It smells bad. But yeah, Black Friday bucket game. I think it's cool. Like Thanksgiving, just roll. Probably just literally roll like after eating turkey all the way down to West Lafayette. I think it's cool. And any standalone games IU can get on national TV I think is always worth it.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it. I kind of like the change. It does. There's so many rivalries that happen on that Saturday, so I think at times it could get a little bit lost. So being able to throw it on that Friday gives it a little bit more of a premier feel. I think in general, I'm excited for it. Not sure if I'll be in attendance for that one, but that's a good one, and it makes it a little more interesting with Odom's comments in the past week or two. So calling us out a bit. So we'll see.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Not that far of a bus ride for Sig, so I'm sure he'll be ready for that one. Number 24, couple freshmen that we like. I think now that they've balanced the classes out a little bit better, I don't think you're going to see a ton of freshmen play this year. Sig will burn red shirts to play the best guys. Like he's been on record saying that. He's going to do that. If you had to pick biggest impact from a freshman, Nate, I would personally, I'm going to go with LeBron Bond, which I said it earlier in the show. I think IU is going to look for like that dynamic playmaking ability out of the slot that Keyshawn Williams. He really brought it to you after the catch. Miles Cross was awesome too, but Williams brought you that yards after catch ability. Yak, I think they call it. The yak ability. So LeBron Bond, super fast, A+ name. I'm not even the LeBron guy, but I mean LeBron Bond. I mean that's just sick.
That's sick.
So,
and a little slot receiver that's fast as heck. Like
you talk about just being a stud already. Like I'm all in. But yeah, no, I think he's going to play. Like, I think they're going to look for ways to get speed the ball. I think they've said that too. Like Shanahan is like, let's get fast guys the ball. It's not that hard.
Yep.
So I think Bond, just from having some of the best speed on the roster right now, will be on the field. I know like Baldwin at safety has been a popular pick for a lot of people. I think you might pick him.
Yep. I had two names written down, and they were LeBron Bond and they were Baldwin. So
there you go.
You talked Bond. I'll add in Baldwin. Again, a position that at safety, there's a few questions for Indiana. So it seems like, I guess I'm being crazy here, going out on a limb and saying that the 4-star best recruit in the class is going to be the impact guy. But it seems like a guy that he really wants to be at Indiana. We talked about Louis Moore earlier, of just like Lewis Moore. I always say Lewis Moore, of how
Sweet
bad
Lou,
he wants.
Louis, Sweet Lou. I mean, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
that's all. Yeah.
Of how bad he just wanted to win. It seems like Baldwin, from everything we've seen, is just a guy that really has wanted to be at Indiana, wanted to be part of this like culture change, this shift. So yeah, I think he's the other guy, and also, is just as you mentioned with Bond, he's at a position where I think potentially the staff's going to be looking for guys that can step up.
Yep.
So combine his talent with the availability to play early, and I think he's got to be one of the answers there.
Yeah, agree. 25 Maxwell Award watch list came out, I think, the day we're recording this, or the day before we're recording this. Mendoza and Surratt are on that list, which, an honor in itself. It's tough to get on that list in general. So to be on the preseason one, obviously people think highly of that duo. Hopefully it's a really, really, really good duo this season. But yeah, I don't know. Not a ton to say there, but I think like to be on that list in the preseason, that's like you are considered in like the upper echelon of college football players across the country. So hopefully that is a connection that we are talking about all season long.
Yeah, if anything, it's just you got to throw this on the list to give them their flowers, because that's an honor. So
yeah, for sure. Back to non-team related stuff. IU had game day and big noon kickoff last year. So big noon kickoff was there for Nebraska. Game day was there for Washington. IU also played. Ohio State had big noon kickoff when they played in Columbus, and then game day in South Bend, obviously for the playoff game on that Friday. So IU had both of the kind of premier shows twice. A lot of people are pointing at the Illinois game just based on like TV windows and other matchups in that week 4 as like a chance possibly to have a noon kick on Fox or FS1 and have big noon kickoff.
Yeah.
I just think it's going to be harder and harder for Big Ten teams to get game day as like this ESPN and SEC divide really grows, it feels like, with the rest of the conferences and country. So we'll see. I don't know. But do you think IU gets either one of those this season?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I think game day will kind of go as far as the SEC will take it, but the slight chance or slight hope that I hold out there is going to be the fact that McAfee's in the state of Indiana, and I feel like he had a big part in getting the crew to Indiana last year. So it went from I was there, it seemed to go incredibly well.
Yep.
So I could see a potential where they would want to return. Have not done the full research here. I guess going back to I should have come with here's the week that it's going to happen, similar to the Thunderstruck. Should have come here with it's going to be this week against this opponent, all this kind of stuff. I mean, if you went into last year, I wouldn't have told you that it would be the Washington game. So I think even if I did the research, I wouldn't necessarily know where it would end up. But I think I would have to go to, there's only been more of a divide between the conferences and the networks that they're affiliated with since that time. And now that we've kind of lost that's a great story. Great job, guys.
Right.
Now that we've kind of lost that, and we're kind of honestly the enemy on that side of things.
Yep.
Probably less of a chance for game day. Big noon kickoff I could see happening just if the season goes as well as we hope it does. Then I think they would have a chance throughout the rest of the season, even if it's not for one of those like games that you would expect it, where it's Michigan, Ohio State, or whatever.
Yeah, could be. Yeah, and obviously the road games too, like at Penn State, at Oregon, at Iowa, like good environments too. So we'll see. Drew Evans. So Signetti said he is fully cleared. He tore his Achilles at the back end of last season. Tyler Stevens came in. So he was basically left guard 3, Tyler Stevens was, because Kidwell went out before the season even started. He was awesome. Drew Evans really stepped in. He was a stud. Like, you could argue behind Carter Smith was the best offensive lineman that IU had. Probably would have been an all Big Ten guy if he didn't get hurt. Had just a monster season after transferring in from Wisconsin. He's fully cleared, apparently. I think fully cleared and fully ready to play and start games in the Big Ten are two different things. But what, if anything, do you think he can give IU maybe in the beginning part of the season, Nate?
Yeah, I mean, coming off an Achilles is just that's a brutal injury. It is. It's not easy to come back from. And then one of the things that I kind of like about this Indiana team going in is I feel like there's just more competition and more depth at the offensive line.
Yep.
So he needs to be at his best kind of early on, or he's just it feels like potentially going to be relying on injuries ahead of him to kind of propel him into the role where he needs to start producing. I hope that everything is perfectly fine. He looks exactly like he did last year. And like you said, he was on pace for all Big Ten kind of season. So certainly has the talent. Great guy. He'll have a little bit more competition, it seems like, this year. But we talked about Lewis Moore and Khalil Benson both being coming back. Benson, obviously, I think will be one of those guys that will be competing for that left guard spot. So he'll have him to beat out. It'll be an interesting one to watch, honestly. I don't know if he'll be a contributor. It's hard, obviously, when you're in July and that's when you're getting cleared to continue football activities.
Yep.
So yeah, we'll just have to work his way back into football shape and Big Ten football shape.
Yep. We will see. I think this is an interesting question. Sammy kind of talked about it on the last pod I did with him, but like, what is success in your mind for this team in 2025? I think the roster is really good. Again, you could argue it's better on paper than last year, at least from a talent perspective. Schedule is probably up a notch, more eyes on you, probably a little more pressure. What do you think is success after going 11-1 and making the playoff last year?
I don't know. The easy answer is just to boil it down to wins and losses, and that's ultimately where everything will end up. But I think a little bit will just kind of fall to eye test, and I'm looking for no regression. Like if we have, I thought we were a really good football team last year. I know it didn't necessarily come through against Ohio State. It didn't necessarily come through against Notre Dame, but I think we were a legitimately very good football team. And we ran up against the two teams that ultimately played for the championship at the end of the year. I think if we drew other matchups, things could have played out differently. So I think a little bit will be eye test of just, do you see from those areas of the guys that they recruited last year and are now coming into their second years, do you see improvement there? They had a lot of success in the portal after the entering the first year. Do we see similar, like, yeah, these are guys that they truly do fit the mold and they can step right in and fill those big shoes that were left in the year before them? Like, is the coaching staff are we continuing to make, like, yeah, they're playing smart football, they're not doing dumb penalties, like all that kind of stuff? It's a lot of things that will go into ultimately the win-loss record. But I think you could see this Indiana team finishing like 9-3, which would be on paper worse than last year.
Yeah.
But I still think you could see that team and watch them for 12 games and say that is a successful season. There's no way about it.
Yeah, for me, I think you have to continue to like build on your identity on both sides of the ball. So I think they have this vision now of like these players they want and the system and all that stuff. So I think you can't abandon that. I think you have to keep reinforcing the system and the culture and all that stuff. For me, I think you have to win at least 8 games. I think one of those 8 wins, ideally more. I think 8, they would say, is a big letdown probably in the building. You have to win at least 8 to kind of keep the momentum going. And I think you have to win one of those like big road games. So Iowa, Oregon, Penn State, I think you need to win one of those 3 games to show like, hey, we made progress. We can do this. Like last year, we looked bad on the road in those 2 big games. Like this year, three of the toughest environments you can play in the country. Like we went in there, played well, and got at least one win. I think for me, that would be great. Cherry on top would be a postseason win. Just kind of tired of being on like those lists. I don't think it matters a ton at this point, but would like to just kind of knock that out and get that over with.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I'd buy a shirt.
I'd buy a shirt. That's great. Yeah. I'd go down to somewhere warm and watch the boys. Probably with some game day loggers again, just like, listening to Thunderstruck. Down there and wherever we would play. But so I think for me, like, you got to continue to just play well, which I know is stupid. That's like the easiest comment you could ever make, but like reinforce the identity, 8+ wins, win one of the road games, hopefully win a postseason game.
Yep. You know it when you see it.
Yep. Segues perfectly into this one. Can IU improve in those big time road environments, Nate? I think probably yes. I think they learned a lot from both of those games. Like everybody's kind of said that. Can they is one.
Will they?
Will they? I mean, they have to, basically.
Yeah. And I think this is why you identified the game you've circled as the Iowa game, because it's another big game against that football brand of Iowa.
Yep.
And you're doing it on the road where you've historically been very, very awful at playing at Iowa. So yeah, I think it's a good question. And it kind of goes back to exactly what we talked about on number 28 of what's success. And you'll kind of know if Indiana will play better in those big time road environments, can play better in those big time road environments, because they've got 3, maybe 4 of them, if you want to add one of those kind of borderline games on the schedule to prove it.
Yep, no doubt. Last one. We said it would be 30 topics, 30 days till kickoff. We promised it would be all over the place. I would say it was. I don't know.
We nailed that. Yeah.
Yeah. We're approaching 90 minutes on this pod. So hopefully a fun way for folks driving or doing something after work or on lunch or something to get ready, I think, for IU football again. I'm pretty ready. I think the last question is appropriate as we look ahead to the end of the month. We're at the beginning of the month right now. IU opens the season to end the month. Are you more excited or are you more anxious to get the season underway, Nate?
I think my answer, actually, I know my answer is excited. And here's how I know why, is when I saw all the quotes coming out of Big Ten Media Days with everything that Sig was saying and, challenging the SEC, kind of scoffing at all the scheduling remarks and we didn't deserve it last year, all that kind of stuff. In the past, those kind of things after a good year would have brought the angst right back.
Yeah.
But it kind of just fired me right back up again. And that is much different than what I've experienced in the past. So I think I have to say I'm excited.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think around this time last season, before we even obviously knew much about the team and all this kind of stuff, I was telling people it's okay to have fun and root for your team, it's okay to say you're an Indiana football fan. I still want people to know that. It's I'm excited. I'm ready to go. Yeah, I agree. The media day stuff gets me fired up. I was all off season, I was saying the same thing. I was people are talking about Indiana football in April. When's the last time that ever happened? Unless it was are they firing Kevin Wilson yet? That was the only time that IU ever got mentioned in the spring. And now it was oh man, look at all these guys that they reloaded with. Oh man, they kept all of their coordinators away from these power programs. Oh man.
By paying them.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. They're getting mentioned already for 4- and 5-star guys in future classes. Is this sustainable? I'm excited, and I think it's okay to be excited. Again, please buy tickets. I don't work for the athletic department, but just buy tickets to the games. That's the easiest way you can support the team. I'm really excited to get this thing going. I will be there for the opener 2 years in a row. So really looking forward to that. Last year it was 190 degrees, I felt like. But the Hoosier game day loggers kept me nice and refreshed and cold throughout the game. And yeah, I'm really excited. And, it's fun to wear your IU football stuff around. Nate and I both live in Chicago. So it's fun to to wear IU football stuff around, and like Saturdays in the fall here, it's just like all Big Ten stuff. And it's fun to be able to wear your IU stuff and not hear people, ooh, you know, doing all that stuff and the jeering and all that stuff. So I'm excited. Like there's a part of me that's anxious for sure, but I definitely am more excited than anxious. And I'm really looking forward to getting this thing rolling.
100%.
All right, Nate, that was 30 topics, one topic per day until kickoff. The countdown to kickoff rolls on HoosierHuddle.com. So we'll cover all the remaining players on the roster up until kick. We'll really start ramping up the ODU coverage kind of in mid to late August here. And then kind of just get into our normal season flow. We'll be out at fall camp, where we're allowed to be, covering all that stuff. We'll continue to cover recruiting. IU's going to have some guys on campus early in the season. And again, just really looking forward to seeing how every college football season, regardless of the program you're following or root for, is interesting and has wrinkles to it. Whether you're going to win the national championship or you're trying to win one game, if you're Akron, there are always wrinkles, and I'm really excited to cover this team. It's going to be fascinating. A team that has coming in with so many expectations after the best season in 162 seasons of Indiana football. How do you follow that up? Time will tell, but we are one day closer to kick at the time of recording this. Nate, any final thoughts?
No, I think you nailed it. I would say if you want more of this content, like we talked about, I think after about the midway point, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And like Alex had mentioned, we are now back independent on HoosierHuddle.com. We're going to have lots of exclusive content. We've got forums up and running. And for $15, just $15, you get 12 full months of content. Please sign up. We really appreciate it. It helps us travel to all this. It helps us cover this team the best way that we possibly can. And it'll run into basketball season, into baseball season. We're covering all Indiana sports now. So 30 days now from Indiana football kickoff, but we've got it all at Hoosier Huddle.